Chapter 3. We spent the rest of the flight putting on our cold weather gear. Thermal underwear went on first, then came several more layers of clothes. "No wonder penguins walk so funny," Arnold said as he waddled down the aisle. "All this padding makes it hard to move." "Arnold, waddle back to your seat," Miss Frizzle ordered. "We're ready for touchdown." I looked up at the flashing sign over my seat. "Fasten seatbelts. Prepare for landing." "Where will we land, Uncle Cecil? I don't see an airport anywhere," I asked as I checked my seatbelt. "Planes and boats both come to Antarctica," Uncle Cecil said. "There are scientists who live on Antarctica, especially during the summer. Several countries have research stations here. Even tourists come to visit." The plane was dropping lower and lower and closer to the water. Suddenly, we could see the ice blue ocean. Below us, there were big chunks of ice floating on it. "Miss Frizzle, I don't see an airport," Ralphie cried out. "Are we going to crash land in the water?" Miss Frizzle was too busy to answer Ralphie. I saw her punching buttons and checking readouts. Beside me, Uncle Cecil was clutching his briefcase to his chest. "Phoebe," he said nervously, "are you sure Miss Frizzle knows what she's doing?" Just when it looked as if we were going to nosedive into the water, something amazing happened. The magic school jet turned into a magic school boat. Miss Frizzle wasn't at the controls of the plane anymore. She now had her hands on a big boat wheel, and all of us kids were sitting on a bench inside the cabin of a boat, instead of in our plane seats. "First, Mate Bird, I need your help," Miss Frizzle called out to Uncle Cecil. "Aye, Captain," Uncle Cecil said. He jumped up to join Miss Frizzle at the wheel. Together, they studied a map of Antarctica. Miss Frizzle sure knows how to break the ice. "Ahoy, mates!" Carlos shouted. "Check out the whale!" We all ran to where Carlos was standing, staring out the window. It didn't take long to see the whale. It was blowing a big spout of water into the air. The force of exhaled air was so strong it pushed up the surface water into a big spray. We thought the spout was cool, but then a huge blue whale broke out of the water right in front of us. It was over 80 feet long. I could see why it's the largest mammal on Earth. "That whale doesn't eat boats, does it?" Arnold asked in a shaky voice. "Not to worry," Uncle Cecil said with a chuckle. "Blue whales eat little sea animals called krill." "Do I look like a krill?" Arnold asked, ducking so the blue whale couldn't see him. "This is how krill looks, Arnold," the Frizz said, flipping open a book. "No family resemblance to you." From the desk of Miss Frizzle. "Little krill in the big chill. Krill are little shrimp-like sea creatures. Antarctic krill are only about 1.5 inches long. Swarms of krill can be several miles wide. That many krill can make the ocean look pink. Whales, seals, Penguins and fish eat krill. Fishing boats catch krill too. I want to see some penguins, Ralphie complained. He waddled around on the deck, flapping his arms like penguin flippers. It won't be long, Uncle Cecil told him. Penguins eat krill too. There are probably some in the water around us right now. Everyone whipped out their binoculars to look. Suddenly, Dorothy Ann let out a shriek. Look at the island ahead of us, she said. There are funny black and white birds all over it. Penguin sighting! Uncle Cecil yelled. He sounded as excited as I felt. We all ran to the front of the boat and trained our binoculars on the island. I couldn't believe my eyes. They were the cutest animals I had ever seen. Let's get closer, Uncle Cecil said. To Miss Frizzle, it's a whole colony of chin straps. Are they really wearing chin straps? I asked Uncle Cecil. No, that's just a pattern in their feathers, Uncle Cecil explained. There are more chin straps in Antarctic waters than any other kind of penguin. From Cecil's Penguin Papers Chin Straps. There are almost 12 million chin-strap penguins in Antarctica. Why are they called chin straps? They have a narrow band of black feathers that goes under their chin from ear to ear. These little penguins are only 28 to 29 inches tall. Chin straps may be small, but they are the boldest penguins of all. There were so many chin straps on the island, you could hardly see the rocks. As we got closer to the island, I noticed a smell. The smell got stronger and stronger. Everyone else had started to hold their noses shut too. Ew! What's that? Wanda asked. Cecil laughed and pointed to the penguins. That's penguin guano you smell. The island is covered with it. Gross, Wanda said. They need some air freshener. I noticed that Liz had turned yellow-green and had her tongue sticking out. Full speed ahead, Miss Frizzle, Uncle Cecil said. Let's get out into some fresh air and find some other penguins. I waved goodbye to the chin straps with my free hand. The other one was still holding my nose shut. I couldn't believe they could stand that smell. I was happy when we were back in the fresh, freezing air. Miss Frizzle, Ralphie called out. Is that Antarctica up ahead of us? We all turned to look where Ralphie was pointing. Ahead of us was a huge chunk of ice. That's just an iceberg, Ralphie, the Frizz said. Just an iceberg, Wanda exclaimed. It's so huge. She was right. The iceberg rose straight up out of the water and had lots of white peaks, and that's only the tip of the iceberg, Tim said. Very big ice cubes by Tim. Only the tip of an iceberg is above the water. 90% of an iceberg is hidden below the surface. A lot of icebergs are big, but some are gigantic. In 1987, an iceberg named B9 was sighted. It was 96 miles long and 22 miles wide. That's about the size of the state of Delaware. I started to get nervous. I remembered that the Titanic sunk after hitting an iceberg. Miss Frizzle, are you sure our boat is safe this close to the iceberg? I asked. Not to worry, Phoebe, the Frizz answered. The frozen frizzle will keep us ship-shape. My heart was beating fast the whole time we passed by the iceberg. It made our boat look like a toy floating in the ocean. There it is! Uncle Cecil suddenly shouted. Antarctica! He pointed to some huge white cliffs in the distance. It looked like an iceberg, but even bigger. Miss Frizzle steered the boat toward the coastline. Suddenly, there was a loud bang on the side of the frozen Frizzle. We felt the whole ship shake. Uncle Cecil, I whispered in a nervous voice, what was that? Keep your cool, Phoebe, Cecil said. We just hit a piece of pack ice. It's just an ice cube compared to that iceberg we passed before. Antarctica was getting a little scary, but Miss Frizzle stayed on course. Suddenly, we sighted a huge cliff of ice ahead of us. What is that? Carlos asked. You're looking at the Ross Ice Shelf, Uncle Cecil explained. From Dorothy Ann's notebook, a chip off the old ice block. An ice shelf is a large chunk of ice that has broken off the land. The Ross Ice Shelf is 200 feet tall, 600 miles long, and almost 1,000 feet thick. It is the largest floating ice shelf on the Antarctic coast. I noticed that Dorothy Ann was busy flipping through her notebook. I knew it was only a matter of time. According to my research, Dorothy Ann announced, an ice shelf is formed at the edge of Antarctica. See the mountain behind the Ross Ice Shelf? Uncle Cecil asked. It's called Terra Mountain. It's 2 miles high and made up of tons of ice, the Frizz said. I think I know why it's called Terra Mountain, Wanda said, shaking in her boots as she looked straight up at the jagged ice. By the time we passed the Ross Ice Shelf, we were all shivering. Miss Frizzle went below decks and came up with a big pile of yellow parkas. Bundle up, she ordered. There is no time to get cold feet.